Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the BRICSONOMICS show. My name is Benjamin Epstein, and I'm really thrilled that you guys are able to join me today. And this is going to be a relatively brief episode, but I did think it was worth highlighting. So please let me know and share your thoughts in the comments if you like kind of a condensed version like this, or if you like more of a deeper analysis like we do in the past. But the reason that we're going to be talking today is that as the end of 2025, we noticed that India has surpassed Japan in GDP, nominal GDP. So we're going to be breaking down how the Indian economy has been able to reach this incredible milestone while also understanding what the impacts and what has brought Japan to this sort of crossroads for their economy. So now let's talk about India first. So India really they have surpassed um, you know, this trajectory that they've been on is quite frankly unprecedented. And India's economic ascent isn't simply a product of their population. It has been a crucial part of their strategic policy and strategic industrial policy. And at the end of the day, the heart of this transformation has been the power of Make in India, as well as the production linked incentive schemes, which has built a new industrial backbone for nations or for the Indian nation in particular to attract what's now $1 trillion worth of investment, which I think is very important. And when we're talking about this, when we're talking about these policies, you know, anywhere between 14 critical sectors like obviously pharmaceuticals and electronics of renewable energy, but investing essentially 24 billion dollars worth has been allocated to this production scheme, and we've really seen the impact from their manufacturing base, which has hit record highs, but also because of the demand fueled or the domestic demand that has been surging for India, particularly within this last year. And Japan, on the other hand, is been dealing with a lot of issues similarly in relation to their population, but also a lot of firms are like that are not productive. We call them zombie firms, really. But also the demand domestically for Japan has been notoriously weak. So you know, and when we now, if we like go back to India in particular, so services in particular really hit a record high and now account for more than half or about 54% of GDP. But I really do want to highlight the impact that the manufacturing has had for India because we're really seeing the modernization of India's infrastructure and their nation really taking place because of these incentives and these policies designed to boost domestic demand. So for India, manufacturing is something that is a great sight to see. The fact that services in particular are continuing to um, dominate the economy right now is great for them, and it will continue to be. Obviously, like if you've seen earlier episodes, UPI is a service that is used all around the world and is a shining example of how powerful and how great Indian service economy has been, especially over like the last 20 years or so. So, but in particular, but as well as for services and manufacturing, one important development is um, the impact of this year's harvest for their farmers because they're expecting an increase in increase in their own profits and revenues for farmers if the harvest goes really well, which will fuel their economy further. And it's worth mentioning for it's worth mentioning the demographics for um both countries because it shows you, finally found the slide, where India's trajectory will go compared to Japan in this case. The median age in India as it stands is 28 years, far, far, far younger, and has a policy and is continuing to have high birth rates. Meanwhile, in Japan, birth rates continue to be incredibly low. And obviously, median age is 49 years. Now, what's very interesting about Japan is their economy, while it has a lot of flaws, it is actually the most complex economy in the world. Now, what does that mean? I want to see if I can pull up the off at the OEC, which is the Observatory of Economic Complexity. And this website, guys, is a great one if you want to do a little bit of digging onto what complexity is and why it's an emerging field in economics, and it's discusses how diversified their industries are and how connected their economies are. That's a little bit about complexity, but we could talk about that at a different time. But the point is that Japan has been number one for a while, and that is incredible for Japan, and it's why they were at one point like the second most powerful or the second biggest economy in the world. But simultaneously, there is a lot of headwinds that Japan is really coming to a head, especially now. Okay, so yes. Oh man, I was going to share this, but it looks not helpful whatsoever. But I recommend go to the Observatory of Economic Complexity if you want to look at their product space and what they're able to manufacture and make, because Japan's economy has been incredible, and the fact that they have been as innovative as they have been, given the headwinds that they faced up to this point, is incredible. But the fact is that uh, their economy is now at a crossroads. And when we look at their trajectory right now, um, after being overtaken by Germany in 2023, it pushed Japan back into like fifth place. Like this isn't, um, it's a combination of policies that have suppressed growth, but also at the same time not being accommodating to the labor force that's already working right now. And this mindset, especially considering how many how weak their currency has been, combined with the amount of debt that Japan continues to accumulate, especially now with their policies trying to increase their defensive capabilities after decades of not doing so. It's putting a lot more pressure, not just on the labor force, but also their currency as well. So in 2022, the share of Japan's population was that the share of Japan's population that was aged 65 and older was the highest in the OECD, and it standed at 30%. So 30% of 65-year-olds, or 30% of Japanese citizens were over 65. And that forces them to not just deal with the strains of putting a lot more leverage into, machinery and things of that nature, because obviously you're limited with a much smaller labor force. But it puts a lot of stress on the uh, public services like, pensions and healthcare, because of the amount of elderly people you have to take care of. And it puts a lot of question into their financial sustainability. When um so now when we talk about their like the zombification of these firms that we see in Japan, that is leading to a lot of productivity shortages. I shouldn't say productivity shortages. It's just leading to poor innovation. Um, they just exist really in to be research and development firms, but the problem with it is that they are completely unproductive, and they're there just to simply milk the tax dollars that the system provides. So while we're seeing a lot of innovation from India's perspective, like for example, the fact that they even surpassed over 50% of clean energy for their own energy production in this year, but Japan is still lagging behind, even with important titans in the automotive industry like Toyota and Honda. They're lagging behind in these fields, and it's making them that much more susceptible to shocks in the oil industry, or not the oil industry, but in commodity markets, while India has been able to diversify away their supply of energy to mitigate the risk from these shocks. And we see with the actions with the United States and Venezuela, and what could potentially happen in Iran, it's going to further shake these commodity markets more, and Japan is making themselves that much more at risk to doing so. And in a brief second, we're going to just discuss the problems with the labor force and sort of the gender gap that we're seeing in Japan's labor force right now. And as always, guys, if you guys have like any questions or anything like that, um, feel free to post them. Okay, so let's talk about. Sorry, losing my breath here. So let's talk a little bit more about the gender gap that we're seeing with Japan, and how it's leading to problems in their labor market. So the reality of Japan's gender disparity, when we're seeing this in the labor market, it's stark. Like we're talking, the gender wage gap is about 20%, which is one of the highest in the OECD. So that just is, it goes to show that there's a lot of ground that Japan needs to make up, because for one thing, this structural barrier is impacting not just their incentive to join the labor market, but also the innovation that comes from, more participation from females, but everyone in general, right? So the fact that, you know, STEM disciplines for women like were under 10% in 2018, which is, you know, unbelievable. And the this is also leading to, disproportionate career progression with men versus women in this case. And we see how this plays out with, in 2022, for example, 17% of men took parental leave, but 80% of women did. So this is leading to a huge productivity puzzle because, like we already talked about, Japan's economy is the most complex economy in the world, and it still stands today. And sorry, guys, I don't mean to keep dragging through the slides. I'm going tap crazy. They don't mean to, the fact that they are the most complex economy, but they're still dealing with these structural barriers is leading to a uh, puzzle in productivity for Japan. And they stand at a crossroads um, for a multitude of reasons. Like Japan's economic landscape is in has a contrast between its status as the global leader in high tech fields like robotics and a lot of research and development spending, which is very important, but weak business dynamism that we're seeing from this zombification here, but low innovation dispersion. So that means that, only a couple entities are really making that innovative push. And ironically, the adoption of digital tools and processes are still remain slow. So, like use of online forms for government services is among the lowest. So it's like a broader reluctance to digitize. And even though they're forward looking in this research and development aspect, there's still a lot of areas that Japan, in particular, needs to focus on to get themselves out of this slump. Because as the birth rate declines for Japan and their interest, and their debt continues to be the highest, so much so that the yen is, declined tremendously, especially over the last few years. Japan is stuck in this productivity puzzle. And between innovating in ways like robotics and research and development, but simultaneously not taking advantage of these tools and sharing them amongst the population while India is focused on connectivity is a huge reason that we're seeing such not even not just a torch essentially being passed from Japan to India, because India is also forecast to have over 6% growth this year too. This is not it's just a ever growing problem of Japan's economy stagnating with policies that are not frankly conducive to actually making a regulatory and labor force that making that business environment much more inclusive and cooperative amongst each other. No innovation really there, but India has have all the opportunities to have massive growth for up to 2030, even surpassing Germany, as Germany would, by 2028 based off of recent forecasts. And India's innovations, in particular in manufacturing, but also with the increase in wages and for the farmers and the strategic industrial policies that India has really pushed and focused on, has led to this unbelievable trajectory that India will be on. But it's also how we could see in stark contrast to how Japan has stagnated, and we could see where they are now. So I'm going to conclude today's presentation today. I know that I kind of skipped around a little bit, so I apologize, but be sure to include any thoughts and comments in the comment section below. If you guys want me to go in a little bit more depth about how India has truly innovated and soared in the year 2025, or other countries for that matter in BRICS, please be sure to let me know. But until then, guys, thank you all so much for watching. and I'll talk to you again all very soon.